Hey guys, I'm back again with another track breakdown. This one is basically, you can treat it as the closer for my new album. There is one more track after that, but it's just a reworking of A Fleeting Memory, and I've already covered that track on this series. So the track's name is It's Finally Over. It's this weird EDM slash synth rock stuff thing. Like, I know I usually do the synth rock music, but this one is like way more EDM than usual, so I figured it would be fun to cover it here. It also happens to be like my personal favorite off of the album, so that'll be fun. The track is 145 beats per minute, 4/4 time signature, and it's written in C sharp major. So we're gonna get started as usual, with the drums, and it's the standard rock drums that I usually use, except there is one or a few major differences. Number one is there's actual side chaining going on, so you can very clearly hear the kick and snare. Second thing going on that you'll notice is that the track has a very distinct snare sound, and so what's going on with that is it's very distorted and loud, and I feel like that's kind of the driving force behind the entire track. So here, I'll let you take a listen. So one interesting thing to note is that the drum pattern basically does not change through the entire track, and it very rarely stops, so it kind of makes the track feel shorter than it is. It changes during the little bridge sections that the track has. So we have this tom pattern. And then in the last one, there's no drums. Just a quick little break, and then right back into it. So one thing to note, during certain sections of the song, there will be this clap sample that is offset very slightly from the snare, so it basically gives the snare a slightly different sound, as opposed to. And then one more thing, in this final section, there's this loud crash that plays continuously. And the influence of the sidechain overall is automated to not be as strong through this final section, and I'll get into why later on. So, first off, we're not going to go straight down the list as we usually do. We're going to start off with this sound, Saw 1, and this is basically the carrying sound throughout the entire track. And it's a sawtooth down mixed with a square wave mixed with another sawtooth down, pitched down one octave, and then finally a sine wave. And it's playing a very short, plucky note, and it's got some pitch modulation, very slight, and that is basically plugged into the same effect chain that I do for my synth guitar. So it's distorted slightly, its low end is reduced, it's got some OTT feedback removal, more OTT, more low end reduction, a chorus which is not doing anything, a pulsar delay which is giving it a bit more metallic sound, more low end removal, it's panned slightly to both sides so it's got a bit of stereo, and then its gain is reduced. So it starts by playing just a very bland C-sharp note before it starts playing some chords. And these are all 16th notes. Chord progression changes during the second part of the song. And then during the last part of the song, it gets another layer on top of it. Also to note that in the second half of this last part, it gets very distorted. And during the final bar, the distortion increases quite a bit. And that's done, that little end bit is done through an LFO automation, which increases as the note plays. So next we're going to move on to the backing elements. So we have the bass guitar that I usually use for all of my synth rock tracks. And this is more distorted than usual. I really cranked the distortion, then I gave it a preset that Jovi made called Doom Compressor. Then it's just the usual processing after that. And that's playing the root notes of the chords. And that basically does not change through the entire track. Next we have the typical synth rock guitars that I use. These are less present than they usually are. I believe I reduced their volume by quite a bit. And so we have the left one. So you notice the sound kind of breaks a little bit when it plays the really high notes, and that's because I put a limiter on it, and the limiter is activating when it reaches those certain frequencies. I took advantage of that during the little bridge before the last section. And the right one does the same thing. During this last section, it plays actual chords instead of playing a single note. And the right one is doing the same. So as for the right one, it's playing slightly different notes than the left one. And in the second part, the right one plays chords, the same chords that are played during the last section. So put them together, you get this. Okay, next we have a sound called lead, that's in quotes, because it's meant to replicate like vocals almost, but not really, it's just kind of a sound. So it's a triangle wave mixed with a square wave pitched down an octave. Then we have a pulsar delay with a preset called stereo echo. We have some relatively strong reverb. That's going into an equalizer, which is removing most of the low end and a few other frequencies I didn't like. And it's being given stereo, and that's it. So this is what it sounds like. It has very strong glide, too. So throughout the track, it plays a different melody. In the final section, the final part of the final section, it gets octaves added on, and its reverb is slowly being reduced. Next we have a sound called Saw 2. This is playing a very weird high layer, and that's just two sawtooth downs. One of them's pitched down an octave. It's got a flanger on it, which is what's adding all of that weirdness, and then most of its low end is reduced, and its volume is reduced, and it's panned to the back. and it plays the same notes that the lead sound is playing. Next we have Nice Pluck. This is a sound that I basically ripped from A Fleeting Memory. It's the exact same sound design, and what that is a note splitter, which I explained in the last track breakdown of those final moments. Basically is treating these two space synthesizers as one synthesizer, so I can have a note track and it'll work for both of them. And so that's just Project Epsilon's Nice Saw preset mixed with another preset called Bell-ish. Its low end is removed and it's got a delay attached to it, some reverb, it's panned to the back. Most of its low end is taken out, and then its volume is increased slightly. And it plays slightly different notes in the second section. And then we have the audio track, and this is basically just playing the downlifters and reverse downlifters that I'm using as a riser. And then it plays one sample that I made called Distort Feedback Trail, and that was bounced from the first track of the album Brutalist. I took a distortion feedback trail, I bounced it into a sample, and then I used it in a few other tracks. So it's mainly meant to sound like this. But I used it reversed in here as well. And then lastly, we have a sound called square lead, which is basically a square lead. Wow, revolutionary. So it's actually not a square lead, it's a sawtooth lead with a square underneath it. And the square has pitch modulation. It's got a bit of OTT, some very weird EQing, removing most of the low ends, then certain problem frequencies that would clip with other ones. It's got a bunch of reverb. It's got feedback removal, limiter, and its volume is reduced, and then it's panned slightly to the sides. And it's got a bit of a strong glide, so it sounds like this, and it plays only during this last section. And so that's that. That's basically all the sounds. It's a very small track. So I'm gonna play this last section here. So, well, I guess I should explain the significance of it. So the story behind this track is that I get easily overwhelmed by making these albums and stuff. And so I wanted to try to replicate that feeling in audio form. So this whole first section sounds like my relief that it's over. It sounds very relieved, kind of happy. And then the second part, everything just gets like super loud and overwhelming. And so that's why everything is like distorted. That's why the sidechain is being reduced. That's why everything suddenly gets several layers added onto it. That's why the chords are playing so many notes. That's basically the reason. So I'll play it for you guys. So that's this track. Very quick, relatively simple draft, relatively small. though you noticed from the recording that my computer was kind of dying a little bit during that last part, because there's a lot of reverb and stuff to process. Anyway, so that's going to be it for this track breakdown. I have a few more planned, but I think before I start on any of them, I might try to invest in some actual editing software so I can make these videos a lot better. So that'll be it for now. Thanks for watching, hope you learned something, and I'll see you all later.